What's happening, guys? Steve here, Cars with Steve, and today we are going to be taking a look at the 2020 Ford Edge. Now, before we dive into it, a couple things to point out. The Edge itself is actually manufactured right here in Canada. Oh yeah, it's manufactured in Oakville alongside of the Lincoln Nautilus. So keep your eyes peeled because I will be doing a comparison video between those two vehicles so you can see what the difference is between the Edge versus the Nautilus. But this is all about the Edge today. So before we dive in, I want to thank you guys so much for the support you've given me so far in this channel. If you haven't subscribed already, make sure you hit the subscribe button with the notifications on. And the reason why is because I like to hide gift card codes somewhere in my videos. Now, on top of that, one thing that is going to come up is when I get to 1,000 subscribers, there's going to be a pretty nice giveaway. Look out next week for those details. But guys, let's dive right into it and figure out what the 2020 Ford Edge is all about. All right, now when it comes down to this vehicle, there are 4 different trim levels that are available. The one that we're looking at today is the SEL model of the vehicle. So we've got the basic S, there's the SEL, there's the titanium, and then the ST. There are 2 different engine choices available in this thing. It's either going to be a 2-liter turbo or a 2.7-liter turbo. Now, one thing to point out is that the 2.7-liter turbo is only available in the ST version of the vehicle, but the 2-liter turbo is available across all of the other trims. And when it comes down to it, when it comes into the gas in this thing, taking a look at the back, all we can do is pop that open. As we can see, it's a capless system like the majority of Ford vehicles. A few things about the gas type is that manufacturer's recommendation is regular 87 octane. Now, having said that, the torque and the horsepower specs for this thing are based off of using a premium fuel. So do you need to use an 89, a 91, 93, etc.? No, just go in knowing if you use that premium gas, the vehicle will behave better. It's going to have better performance, but it's not a necessity. 87 minimum regular gas is perfectly fine for these things. Now, a couple things to point out that's going to be standard across the Edge level for every trim is that we've got the blind spot system. The blind spot system, so this is going to highlight orange when somebody's entered the blind spot on either side of the vehicle. We've also got the backup camera, that's going to be standard, and there's also a lane keeping system. So lane keeping system, we can turn that one on or off using the button along the side. Now, a couple things about the lane keeping system, works a few different ways. We'll get into that in just a sec when we jump inside the vehicle. A couple other things to point out is that we've got a reverse sensing system. So that beeping that we get as we back up, if you're really not a fan of that beeping, you can turn it off. So that's one of the nice things, is that you can turn off that beeping if you really, really don't like it. Now, when it comes down to trunk space on this thing, there is a ton of space available. But looking at the key fob, a couple things, we've got the ability to unlock, lock, remote start, we can open the trunk, and we've also got our horn or panic alarm button. When it comes down to the capabilities of that trunk, so a couple things, the SEL are going to be, so the SE, I should say, is going to be a manual liftgate. The SEL is going to be a power. The titanium and the SE are going to be a power with a foot-activated liftgate. Now, having said that, you can get the foot-activated liftgate inside of the inside of the majority of the trim levels as well. It is available in a convenience package. Now, a couple things when it comes down to it, like the sizing of this thing is huge. Tons of space along the side. When we dive underneath, we've got a spare tire, mini spare tire, not a full size. We've got some storage space along the side, and we've got our little spigot. We would use that if we ever need to use that jerry can to fill up the vehicle. It is powered down for the seats and manually lifting them back up. So along our driver's side, I should say, we've got our left versus right. All we're gonna do is press that button. As you can see, the seats are now down. So it's powered down, manual back up. In the back, we've also got hooks. So if you do get the cargo net, you've got the capabilities to use that in the back as well. Lifting the seat back up, very, very straightforward. All we're gonna do is crank, lock it back into place, and you're good to go from there. So, a couple things to point out. In the back, it is a very, very spacious vehicle. Like, I'm 6 feet tall. I've got the driver's seat set up as if somebody's 6 feet tall. And look at the room. Like, there is a ton of room in the back. I've got inches there. Looking down, I've got a ton of space on my feet. Looking up ahead, this one doesn't have the sunroof, so that's one thing to consider. No sunroof in here, which means that we've got a little bit more space and a little bit more headroom in the top. Now, a couple other things to point out inside of this thing. The seats are not adjustable. So unlike in the Escape where you can adjust the seats, the edge seats are fixed. Now, having said that, we do have a 60-40 split, so even though we've got a ton of space in the back, if you need some more, you can fold the seats down independently, so either the 40 on the passenger or the 60 on the driver. Now, when it comes down to it, we've got cup holders in the back. So as you can see there, we've got some cup holders, lift it back up and lock it into place. Now, one thing to note, this is the SEL trim level of the vehicle, which means it's got the ActiveX seating material. The ActiveX seating material is essentially a pleather seat. If you're looking for a true leather, you're looking at the titanium or the ST trim level of the vehicle. Now, a couple other things. In the back, we do have our traditional cigarette lighter adapter. We've got a little bit of storage space in the back as well, and then a few pockets. So very, very straightforward, very, very comfortable at the same time. And whether you're looking at the cloth versus the leather interior, it's going to function the same. You've still got the ability to have heated seats with the cloth. With the leather seat, you've got either the option for heated front seats, or depending on the trim level and the other level you're at, you've got the capabilities to get cooled seats as well. Now, when it comes down to it, the SEL version of the vehicle does not have seat memory. We'd be looking at the titanium or the ST to make that happen. We've got our window adjusting buttons along the seat. We've got power adjustable buttons on the driver and the passenger side. So we can move the seat forwards, backwards, we can go up and down with it, we can move the backrest, and we've also got power lumbar support as well. When it comes to the steering wheel, so steering wheel is manually adjusted in the SE and the SEL. It goes to power adjusting in the titanium in the ST. So the steering wheel, we can move up, down, in and out because it is telescopic. Once you've got that perfect position, you're just gonna crank up, lock it back into place. Starting this thing, it is a keyless system, so we're going to just hit the engine start-stop button there. Perfect, takes a few seconds to fire up. And as you can see, we do have our traditional Ford logo that's just launching there as the vehicle turns on. While that's doing its thing, let's look along the side. So we've got our glove compartment with a little bit of space there. Very, very straightforward. Passenger side. And same thing, very straightforward. Now, when it comes down to the screen, whether or not you get the navigation is up to you. When it comes to the S and the SE, the navigation is going to be an optional thing. So with built-in navigation, factory navigation, it gives you the ability to not have to rely on your data on your phone. Now, having said that, this Sync 3 system is standard across the trim levels, so the SE and above. That means that you can use the Android Auto or Apple CarPlay capabilities on your phones, which is great because you can mirror your phone screen here, which means that you can use Google Maps, you can use Waze, you can use Apple Maps and things like that directly through the center screen. So that means that you don't need to worry about factory navigation. You can just run off of your phone instead if you prefer. A couple of things to point out from the screen. If your vehicle's got the ability for it, we've got heated seats in the front, so we can turn the heated seats on there, or we can use the buttons down here instead. We've got the ability to have a heated steering wheel, basic audio settings, climate control settings, the ability to easily add a phone in. We've got our basic settings, so sound, Bluetooth settings, general settings, our automatic updates, some voice control settings, and our valet mode. So very straightforward for Ford vehicles. As we start to move down the cluster, we've got our four-way blinkers. Moving down a bit more, we've got our volume rocker. We've got the ability to manually tune by pressing this, or we can change stations by doing direct tune, or we can use our steering wheel button using this voice-activated button instead. Moving down, we've got, so we can either change between radio stations, we can flip between songs if our phone is connected, we can play and pause. As we start to move down a little bit, we've got dual zone climate control. So if the passenger likes it a little bit warmer or a little bit cooler, you can do that, or you can just set it as a basic cabin temperature, and we can hit auto and let the vehicle Goldilocks it and figure out what's just right. We've got the ability to increase or decrease the fan speed. We've got the ability to change the fan where it's going. So it's either going to the windshield, we can go max windshield, rear windshield defroster, auto setting, air conditioning, max AC, and then from there we've also got our air circulation button. So very, very straightforward. Turn that system on or off as necessary. All right, as we start to move down, so popping this open, we do have a nice space there. So if we wanted to store a cell phone, we've got the ability to do that. We can store our cell phone down there, we can store our cell phone up there, or we can store our cell phone in the back there. So I love the fact that Ford's thought of so many different ways that we can have our phone. Really, really useful if you're an Uber or a Lyft driver. Just pop your phone in there if you'd like to, or you can kind of do the usual, where you have your phone put onto the screen by using that Sync 3 system instead. We've got a couple USB ports. As we start to move down, as you can see, we've got some cup holders. We've got our rotary dial. That dial is going to let us change between what gear we're in. So we've got our park, reverse, neutral, drive, or the sport mode. So sport mode essentially is going to tighten things up and make the drive feel sportier. We've got our parking brake and our auto engine start-stop button. So the auto engine start-stop, that doesn't kick in all the time. It's up to the vehicle when it happens. What that does is when we come to a complete stop, the vehicle might turn off. But it's up to the vehicle when it does that. If you've got the AC or the heat blowing, it might not turn off whatsoever. If you really, really don't like it when that happens, just make sure every time you start the vehicle back up again, you press that A button and it will get rid of that so that you don't have to worry about the start-stop. When it comes down to the steering wheel, so as I mentioned, this is the SEL trim level of the vehicle. So we've got our traditional speedometer there. We've got our tachometer off to the left-hand side. Fuel settings. We do have the ability to change some of these settings around. When it comes to the steering wheel, we've got a couple different dial pads, so we can look between some different trip counters, we can look at our fuel economy, driver assistance settings, so things like our blind spot system. Cross traffic alert is a great feature. What the cross traffic alert does is if the vehicle senses a vehicle coming perpendicular from your left or your right side, what it'll do is it'll warn you, letting you know that there's a potential collision there. Great safety feature. There is the lane keeping system as well. So that lane keeping system works a couple different ways. So way number one is that as you start to veer over into a lane without signaling, you're going to get a little bit of a steering wheel shake. It almost feels like you're running over that rumble pavement. So that's option number one. Option number two is a lane centering system. So as you start to veer over into a lane without signaling, the vehicle will take over and it'll start to pull you back into your lane and recenter you into your lane. It's not true hands-free driving yet. We are almost there though. Getting really, really close. Look at the 2021 F-150. That's where we're going. It's really, really exciting stuff. So, and then the third option for you. So third option for the lane keeping system is to do the steering wheel shake, and it can recenter you and pull you back into your lane. Again, just really depending on what you'd like to do, whether you'd like that going or not, your choice. So we've got some flexibility, some customization that we could do. The left-hand paddle, so the left-hand directional pad, I should say, is going to control this mini left screen, whereas this on the right is going to control the right screen. So very straightforward there. As we start to move down the steering wheel, we've got our ability to use the adaptive cruise control. So adaptive cruise control system, very straightforward. So we can turn it on by pressing this button. That's going to let us choose, or dictate, I should say, how close or how far we are away from the vehicle in front of us. So see there how it changes between 4 versus 1. That's going to dictate how close or how far away we are from the vehicle there. And we've got the ability, once we've got the speed that we like, we're going to hit set, and we can either increase or decrease 1 kilometer or 1 mile per hour at a time. And we can turn the lane centering system on or off. We know it's on when we see those bowling lanes there. It's essentially letting us know that it's going to keep us in our lanes. So a couple other things to point out. The lane keeping system is great. The adaptive cruise control is even better. If you normally don't drive with cruise control, try the adaptive cruise. I guarantee you are going to love it. The adaptive cruise, what that'll do is it'll automatically brake and slow down the vehicle for you if the vehicle in front of you starts to slow down as well. So let's say if you're driving on the highway, you're set at 120, car in front of you starts to slow down because of traffic, yours is automatically going to brake. If they get out of the way, pick up speed again, yours will automatically pick you back up to speed. So it's a really, really great feature. I absolutely love that. Love the feature. I guarantee once you start using it, you'll love it as well. Back onto the steering wheel, we've got the ability to change between stations or songs. We can answer a phone call, we can hang up on a phone call, we can increase or decrease our volume. We've got the ability to mute, and we can use our voice activated button. Voice activated button is going to give you the ability to make phone calls. You can change the radio station, or you can navigate if your vehicle is equipped with factory navigation. You can press and hold in order to activate either Siri or Bixby, I believe is Samsung's version of Siri. So again, your choice whether or not that happens. On our right-hand stick, we can control how fast or how slow the wipers go, turn the wipers on or off. We can use our reverse wiper, or rear wiper, I should say, by using the stick on the right-hand side on the tip. Along our left-hand side, we've got the ability to turn our lane keeping system on or off by pressing that button. And then we can turn our high beams, so flipping the high beams on there, and we've got our directional, so if we're turning left or right. Along the left-hand side, so we've got a little fuse panel underneath, we've got our fog lamps, we've got the ability to either increase or decrease the lightness or darkness on the screen, and that's going to be for the Sync 3 screen as well as for our cluster. Very straightforward. A couple other buttons to point out, we do have our trunk release as well as our traction control. So we can turn the traction control off. Really, really useful for wintertime driving. Now, a couple other things to point out is that the vehicle is available either in a front-wheel drive or an all-wheel drive variety. If it's all-wheel drive, it's an intelligent all-wheel drive. So what that means is the vehicle is going to keep you in front-wheel drive probably the majority of the time. But when it recognizes that there's slippage in any of the tires, it'll automatically, the car's electronic brain will shoot that power between the necessary wheel. Really useful if you ever do some off-roading, even minor off-roading, like going over gravel roads and things like that. You might need that extra traction, and the all-wheel drive system works really, really nicely in the wintertime. Couple other things to point up overhead. As I mentioned, this one doesn't have the sunroof, so we do have a little bit of a higher roof there. If we did have the sunroof, the buttons would be up here, but this one obviously doesn't. Up over top, we've got the ability to turn on each light individually. All the cabin lights, make sure that the cabin lights don't come on or off, depending on whether the doors are open or not. Up overhead, hello, we've got our traditional rear view mirror as well on the top, and we also have our sunglasses holder. All right, so that is a basic summary of this vehicle. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you have any questions, make sure you ask them down below. If you enjoyed the video, make sure you like it. Please consider subscribing as well. And until I see you guys next time, stay safe.